Hello, this is the October 12th meeting of the League of Women Voters for the Anoka area, Anoka, Blaine, Coon Rapids area. And tonight our topic is your vote, your ballot. We really want to ensure people about ballot security and how it is safe to vote this year. We encourage every single person to get out and vote. You can vote by absentee ballot, you can vote early, or you can vote in person on election day. But please get out and vote and watch this video to learn a lot of little facts about voting and how you can do it safely. Thank you and enjoy the video.
I'm Gretchen Sable and I'm president of LWV ABC. That's League of Women Voters, Anoka, Blaine, Coon Rapids area. We serve Champlin over in Hennepin County plus almost all of Anoka County. So we have a broad geographic area we serve, and we have a lot of members, and we have a lot of fun. So, so that's who we are. What I'm going to do today is do our Friend of League Awards. And the first one, so what is a Friend of League Award? This award is given to an individual or organization that's made significant impact on the community through civic engagement. And I have a picture here of some of the different groups that we've recognized in the past few years. Mel Honorud helped us with a fundraiser. We had the mayor of Andover, Julie Trude, who provided us with a meeting space until we went virtual. We have Leslie and Catherine from QCTV for their continued work with us, and Lori Anderson for her work with Transformative Circle. So that's the kind of groups that we work with. And this year, we're doing presentations to the Columbia Heights Library and the Anoka County Libraries, especially Northtown and Rum River. We had our 100th anniversary celebration of the 100th anniversary of League of Women Voters, the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, and we had a lot of festivities that were lined up and happened in the early part of 2020 before everything shut down, fortunately. So I wanted to thank our library partners. We had Erin Trzaskowski and Lydia Pothoff at Anoka County Libraries, and Courtney O'Brien at Columbia Heights. You guys all wave or do something, acknowledge yourself. There you go. Hey, good job. Thank you. And so anyhow, we really appreciate the work that these libraries did. I have some pictures here. This is from the Northtown event. We had a Girl Scout flag group do an opening. We had a membership table. We had a reenactor, Ann Essling. We had Sandy Connor gave us a history talk on women's right to vote. And a bunch of us wore sashes and funny clothes and had a great time. So it was a good event. We really thank the libraries for that. So this is Columbia Heights Library. They have a new library, beautiful new library. This is the award that member Mary Jo Truchon. Mary Jo, you want to wave? There she is. Mary Jo's the artist that does these awards for us. And so this one is being presented to Courtney O'Brien and the Columbia Heights Library. And you can see that there. This is the text of it. We honor your partnership with League of Women Voters to celebrate. We also honor your publicity for hosting the voter registration event and assisting with outreach activities, and for the many services that are provided to help people become engaged. We are grateful. And then looking at Northtown and Rum River Libraries, we have the award that was done for them, again by Mary Jo. In this, we honor their partnership. I gotta move my little, there you go. We honor your partnership with League of Women Voters to celebrate 100 years. The generous exhibit space, we did have the traveling exhibit at all these libraries, and so that was good. We had opening celebrations, news articles, book displays, and all kinds of other things around the 100th celebration that really helped to highlight that to people. And so for that, we want to thank both our Anoka County partners in that. And another award that we have is the Zilla Way Award. Zilla Way is a longtime member of ABC, and she has, this award was created in 1996 to honor members who help the organization quite a bit. And Pat's not on tonight, but we're recognizing Pat Kennedy. So Pat Kennedy is getting the award, the Zilla Way Award, and this is what it says: a knowledgeable and gracious community leader. Pat took on the task of membership chair and used her energy, technical skills, resourcefulness, and community connections to help LWV ABC more effectively serve our area. Pat's a great organizer. She led the creation of a new website that empowers our league and the community to take civil action. Her friendly face welcomes everybody to our meetings and events. And so this is Pat's award. Oh, maybe it's not Pat's award. So I thought I had that. Oh, anyhow, that's, I will make sure that I sign those once I actually have them in person, and I will get them to the people who win them. There's Pat's award. Kathy's holding it up. So we thank everybody for their efforts and their time. And now I'm gonna toss it off to Sue Butler. There's Sue. Where's Sue? Wave, Sue. Okay, Sue's gonna run it now from here. And our guest, Paul Linnell. Wave, Paul. We have two Pauls and a Paula on here. So Paul Linnell is the Anoka County Elections Manager, and he's going to be talking with us about this. And so I'll let you guys take it away, and I will.
Gretchen, I was wondering if our library guests might want to say a few words before we let them get away, which is what we would probably do if we were in person.
That's true. Library guests. Courtney, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to host the wonderful exhibit. It was a great chance for us to engage in a different way with our library patrons, and a fun way to connect the vote to our community, getting people excited about the vote, talking about the beautiful things that were in the exhibit, and getting staff jazzed to get people registered into the right place to vote in Columbia Heights. So thank you so much.
Thank you. You know, I moderated the voting, the candidate forum in Columbia Heights, and your people are very engaged. It was just a lot of fun. So it was a good job. Thanks. Aaron and Lydia, there you are. You guys want to say something?
I guess I'll go. I also want to thank you for the opportunity to host this wonderful exhibit. I mean, it really was a special event for us, and we have very fond memories. And one of my fondest memories was a father who was holding his very young daughter's hand and taking her through the exhibit and explaining what each of the pictures showed, and explaining to her that a long time ago, girls couldn't vote, and hearing this cute little voice saying, "Why not?" and just the realization that we've come a very long way in a, historically speaking, a short period of time, it was wonderful. It was really wonderful. And I know the books we've added to the collection as a result of the exhibit have circulated a lot this year. There's so much interest in the 19th Amendment this year. A lot of people are doing reports and doing research, and that exhibit is something that has had a very long tail, and it's still enriching our library. I have my I Will Vote pin on. I don't know if you can see it. I wear it every day because tis the season, and just to remind people to vote. And I know that a lot of other staff members have their pins on when they work with the public as well. So thank you again. It was quite an experience.
And also Patty's here. Patty Hetrick is leading the libraries for Anoka County right now. Patty, I don't know if you wanted to say anything.
Well, I just want to mention Janet from Rum River is here too, and Aaron, of course, you already know.
Oh, okay.
I am not surprised. I wasn't there for some of this stuff, so I can't take any credit, but I am not surprised at the wonderful work. Our branches are always passionate. They're great hostesses. They're intrigued. They're always interested. And I thank you guys from the league to give us the opportunity to partner with you, and I hope we can continue to do so. Whether we have COVID or not, it makes it a little harder with COVID, but we are here to be your partners and look forward to more of it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Kathy, for reminding me to slow down here.
No, that's okay. And I was going to say, our library guests are certainly welcome to stay on for the program that follows, and we hope they will. We understand, though, their schedules may not permit, but they're certainly welcome to continue on with us this evening.
Okay, Sue, take it away.
Okay, Leslie, can you bring it up for me? Well, this year we thought that people might have some concerns just with all of the news about how secure our ballots are when we vote. And so we thought it would be a great topic, and we hope that you do like it. Can you go to the next one, Leslie? So there's a lot of information. I mean, there is tons of information out there, but the League of Women Voters conducts candidate forums on local elections. And you can watch those at this website here, the YouTube channel. And I will tell you that I did watch them to help make my decisions on some elections where I didn't have any awareness of the candidates. And it's just a very powerful tool, and I deeply appreciate the league's work in this area, and endorse it for us to use to make our choices. It's very helpful. Even if we can't be there in person to watch these forums, they're all there this year particularly. They're all online. So next one. There are 3 ways that you can vote in this country: absentee or mail-in ballot. You can mail early. You can do your in-person early voting, and the third way is to do in-person voting on election day. And you do not need to give a reason for an absentee ballot. It used to be you had to be out of the state at the time, but that is not true anymore. You can just apply for an absentee ballot. Do you want to go to the next one, Leslie? So right now you can go to the state and ask for an election ballot, and they will send you one. In my own personal experience, I asked for a primary and election ballot at the same time, and they just flowed right through. So you'll receive the ballot in the mail with comprehensive directions. I talked to a couple of people this year that were very nervous about mail-in ballot because they thought that all the envelopes would be confusing, but they aren't. There's very explicit directions that make it real easy to know what to do. This year, because of COVID, you don't have to have your ballot witnessed unless you're an unregistered voter or you have changed your name. So if you haven't been registered voter, or you haven't been registered at a new address, then you would need to have your ballot witnessed. Then the other part is returning your absentee ballot is that you should mail it quickly. And it must be postmarked by November 3rd, 2020, or it can't be counted. So recommend to mail it early. Can you go to the next one? If you promptly return your ballot, they can be returned to the Anoka County Government Center or the City Hall, town, wherever you live. You cannot return your ballot to a different city. So if you live in Ramsey, you can't return it to the city of Anoka. You can return it to Anoka County. Ballots need to be returned inside the designated building. If you're returning a ballot for another person, you're going to be asked to show identification and provide a name and signature for the additional ballot. You can only do this for 3 voters. So if you can't be going around the neighborhood collecting ballots for people, you have a limit. On election day, you may drop your ballot off by 3 p.m. at the election office where you applied for a mail-in ballot. So in my case, I applied for it at the state, and I would need to then drop it off there. Is that correct, Paul?
No. So yeah, with the application, it's with the county still. So it'd be the same
Okay.
locations as the drop off. No ballots can be returned to the state, and no ballots can be returned to a polling place. So if you're an Anoka County resident, you would drop it off either at Anoka County or at your city by 3 p.m. on election day. Or of course, if you did drop it off, you would have the option to still vote in person at your polling place.
So helpful to have the expert on hand. Can you go to the next one, Leslie? So mail-in ballots, there's been a lot of discussion about fraud with mail-in ballots. And mail-in ballots are carefully scrutinized by two people. Some part of this slide is missing. To ensure that the there it is. To ensure the private security number provided is correct and the signature is a match. So if the envelope doesn't meet the acceptance criteria, the voter will be contacted and may be sent a new ballot with a letter noting the reason for the rejection. If there isn't time to send a new ballot, it's my understanding that they will make an effort to contact the voter by email or phone to tell them, right, Paul?
Yep, and a couple of things that I'll add on this. So just to clarify on the first bullet, so yes, the ballot board, a team of two will always review the signature envelope to make sure that the ID number provided by the voter matches what's on the application. One of our most common questions that we get is, I don't remember what number I put on my application. Our response to that is to tell voters, you can certainly put both. There's nothing that prohibits you from putting both the last four of your social and your driver's license on there. You can also call us and we can cross-reference your application to see which one you provided. The other question we get is about the signature specifically. And in Minnesota, if the ID number matches, we don't need to do a match to the signature. And oftentimes a voter may not have a signature on file because if they registered to vote online or through the DMV, and then they applied for the absentee ballot online, we don't have an ink signature to compare anything to. So the signature is only used as a fallback method in the event that the ID numbers don't match. Then we can look to see if the signatures do match, and in that case, we would still be able to accept it. And yes, we are required by law to send a replacement for every single absentee ballot that is rejected. And then the additional criteria kicks in within the last 5 days. We're also required to contact that voter by email and or phone if we have that information on file to let them know your ballot has been rejected. We will still send a replacement unless we hear from them otherwise that they don't want one sent to them, and we'll let them know here are your options for voting early in person or to vote on election day.
Thank you. Leslie, can you proceed? I think we're getting, oh, there we go. The election officer will try to reach by phone or email if there isn't time. Okay, next one. Okay, Leslie, can you play the video and then Paul will do some discussion after that.
And one thing I'll clarify is this video was made ahead of the primary election. So there are a few details here that are specific to the primary that I can talk about, you know, the slight changes that would be in place for the general election.
Thank you.
We'll get you another precinct here. Keep it moving along. What you see behind me is the absentee ballot board that's meeting to open the absentee envelopes that have been sent back by voters that have voted by mail for the August primary election. So when a ballot comes back to our office, the signature envelope is reviewed by a team of two. They look at the signature envelope to determine that the identification number on the application that was submitted by the voter matches what was sent back on the signature envelope. So we verify that and have to see that that's there before we can ultimately accept the ballot. It's the way that we help to track and ensure that each voter just has a single absentee ballot record and a single absentee ballot that is tied to their information. So it would prevent any case of a voter casting multiple ballots. Absentee balloting begins 46 days prior to Election Day. So any absentee ballots that we get back and that are accepted beginning at that 46th day are kept in secure ballot storage here at the county. Then beginning 14 days prior to Election Day, we have teams of two election judges that have different major party affiliation, and they're working to get the absentee signature envelopes open. Then they'll open the ballot secrecy envelopes, separating the signature envelope from the ballot, so those two are never kept together, and doing a count of those envelopes by precincts. So this is the count of the absentee ballots that have been opened each day. So we verify that the number of envelopes corresponds to the number of ballots that are removed, Each time the ballot board convenes, we'll have an additional count of the number of those ballots. When we get to the end, we'll have a total for all of the days. So each precinct will have a total number of absentee ballots that have been counted. And then that will correspond then to what is ultimately processed through the central count machine. Each team will initial the ballots, get them smoothed out and straightened and in a condition that they're ready for running through our central count machine, and then that will be the next phase. These ballots will go back into secure storage, and then starting tomorrow, we'll actually run them through our central count machine. But this is kind of that first step that gets the ballots ready to go through that counting process. This is now the stage in the process where we're able to feed the absentee ballots through our central count machine. It incorporates the same kind of technology that's used in the ballot scanners that are out at the polling places. It's just a much higher capacity scanner that allows us to move a number of absentee ballots through in a short amount of time. So it also has functionality that will recognize certain issues that might take place with the ballots as they're being run through. So if a ballot has a tear in it, or if there's something that the machine can't read it, it will outstack it to one of the bins. There's a process that takes place where we will do a duplication for any of those ballots that are not able to be read, and that's done by 2 election judges that take the information on the defective ballot and move it on to a new ballot that can be read by the machine. This group will reconvene multiple times, so each time the election judges are opening ballots out at the absentee ballot board, will be followed by a round of counting here at the central count machine. So this will take place at least 4, 5, 6 times for the primary election. For the general election with higher quantities, we may have additional passes through. No result totals will be generated until election day, so nothing will be known until after the close of polls at 8 p.m. on election day. Once we reach that point, we are able to pull results from the central count machine, and those are then merged with the polling place results to give us our total results for the election. New this year, so for the state primary election in August, we do need to, by law, accept absentee ballots the day after the election and then the second day following the election, as long as they are postmarked on or before election day. So that will give us 2 additional days where we'll be scanning those ballots and then adding those to the totals. So the results totals that appear on election night will reflect all absentee ballots counted to date, as well as the polling place results. And then there will be 2 results updates on that Wednesday and Thursday. The Thursday will give us our final unofficial results. And then on Friday afternoon, we will convene the canvassing board to make those results official.
I took a few notes of things I thought might be some of the questions that you guys would have as a result of the video, but I'm open to answering questions now too for what came to mind as you're watching. One of the things was, when it comes to the absentee ballot board reviewing the envelopes, what might be something that would cause a ballot to be rejected? A missing voter signature, the ID number not matching if we don't have the number to compare it to. For our non-registered voters or ones that have updated their registration, if they don't include the form or if it's not completed or if the witness doesn't complete part of their section for non-registered voters, those are all reasons that we would be required to reject and send a replacement. Certainly the fact that the court ruling has eliminated the witness requirement for registered voters, as well as the extension of the number of days in which a ballot can be accepted beyond election day. If it's postmarked on or before election day, that will significantly cut down. Those were easily our top 2 reasons for why we would have had to have rejected a ballot in past years. So in the video here, we referenced the 14-day period that we have to open and begin counting ballots. That's especially critical for this general election. As I mentioned, we've already issued about over 80,000 ballots. We've already got 44,000, I think, back by last count, so 44,000 accepted ballots. We can start opening those beginning a week from Wednesday, and that day can't come any sooner. We'll be very excited to start getting that process started and use that additional time to be able to get everything ready. And that will allow us to keep pace with opening the ballots and getting the tabulation ready for the close of polls on election night. And as a result, we should be able to again post pretty much everything that we've accepted and counted to date to be added in with the polling place results to give a fairly full picture of the election results totals for the general election. We will continue to add to that daily in the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of that week, and then Monday, Tuesday of the following week to give us our final totals for those additional ballots that are accepted. I did see, and one other piece with the additional days, the additional kind of timing, and also the CARES funding that came in. The video that you saw, we had one central count machine for the primary election. We've actually been able to secure an additional machine that we'll be using for the general election, which was a bit of a coup in that every county across the country was trying to get these machines. So we felt very fortunate to be able to have received a second one and use CARES funding to purchase that. So that will really help us with having a second counting team for this election. One of the questions I saw come through the chat was what happens with the ballots that are cast in person or dropped off at the cities. So we have a process by which I think there's a total of 4 scheduled intervals that those ballots will be delivered back to the county, and they'll be run through the same election, teams of election judges that will be opening those envelopes and preparing them for counting. So they'll be brought through the exact same counting source as the envelopes that are mailed back or dropped off at the county. The exception to that would be ballots that are cast during the last 7 days. So that's kind of referred to as the direct balloting period, where a voter who fills out an absentee application during those last 7 days at their city or at the county will get their ballot and be able to insert it directly into a ballot counter. So those ballots that are tabulated there are then the results for those ballots are transmitted back to the county server after that ends on that Monday evening, but no results totals are pushed through until after the close of polls at 8 p.m. So I think I'll pause there and leave it if you had more questions on that.
Are you seeing the questions coming in, Paul?
Let's see.
Here's one. Suppose I move or die after casting an absentee ballot. How's that handled?
Good question. So with if there is a death of a voter who has already submitted an absentee ballot, and there's already been a handful for this election, we make those updates in the statewide voter registration system and then make the corresponding update to the absentee ballot. So if we have it in accepted status, we then pull that ballot and spoil it and mark the reason for why we would have to spoil it and why it ultimately wouldn't be counted. So if a voter passes away, and it's important here to note that this is up until that 14-day period before we start opening the envelopes, because once we've started opening envelopes, then the ballot is separated from the signature envelope and it's already been run through for counting. So there's nothing that we can do with that change. As far as if a voter has moved, that would be updated as well. And we've had a few cases where if a voter has had a change of address request go through, they've already got their ballot at their old address, and in some cases it's been forwarded, they may send that ballot back. We're contacting each and every one of those voters to make sure, is this really your new address that you're residing at? If so, you need to vote a new ballot because your races are different based on where you reside. Voters should be casting a ballot based on where they are living on election day. So in some cases, it's a fluid situation, especially for those that are moving close to election day. But if people know that they'll be moving, say, even the week prior to election day, they should be waiting and voting based on that address where they will be residing that week prior to election day. And there's all sorts of other, kind of options for voters, including those that are moving out of state and what type of ballot they might be eligible for. So for example, a voter that leaves Minnesota and moves into a state where their voter registration deadline has passed, there's actually something called a presidential only ballot that voter would be eligible for because they've missed their registration deadline in another state. They would get a ballot from Minnesota that would just include the presidential race to ensure that they can still vote in that contest, but they would not be eligible for others. So the timing kind of makes a difference as far as when and where they're moving, or in the case of a deceased voter. But yes, that's definitely one of the added challenges of just the number of cases where we have staff following up with emails, phone calls, letters being sent to these voters to make sure that they're being processed correctly, including all these different scenarios. Let's see.
That is amazingly complex. Just amazing.
Yeah, the next question that came in says, last week in the Next Door community group, a woman said her daughter was registered to vote with her first and middle name reversed. Where can the daughter go to get that fixed?
So that's usually, and it depends on where the information came through. The easiest way would probably be you can submit an updated registration, or to just contact the county office if it was a data entry issue on the county side, or even if the voter mistakenly flip-flopped them when they were doing the online application. We can make corrections, even for a spelling error, or if a name is flip-flopped like that. That's not too big of a challenge. And let's see. So the next question was,
there's some confusion
between the MN Votes website. We are hearing tonight about dropping off ballots. The website says to only return to the election office that sent the ballot. So in the case of ballots that are cast within Anoka County, any voter, and I should note, it does vary by county. So not all counties have their city halls open for in-person voting or for dropping off ballots. But within Anoka County, any mailed ballot, or if you vote in person but decide to take your ballot with you, you can bring that back to either your city hall or to the Anoka County Elections Office.
Can you address poll watchers versus poll challengers?
Yes. So it's at least within the state of Minnesota, it's pretty straightforward. There actually is no legal term as a poll watcher that's authorized in Minnesota election law. Challengers are authorized, one per major political party, or one for each non-affiliated candidate. So for local candidates, they can also appoint challengers. They must get prior authorization to serve as a challenger. Beyond that, and they have a very limited role in terms of what they can do within a polling place. They can only challenge the eligibility of a voter to vote if they have personal knowledge that that voter is not eligible. So it can't be based on suspicion or a hunch. It has to be direct knowledge that that person is not eligible to vote. That is their one job that they're able to perform. They can't handle election materials or do anything outside of that scope. And there are no other poll watchers that can serve a function. There's a limited list of who's authorized to be in a polling place that includes, voters, their assistant if they're bringing someone with them to help them vote, election judges, the media if they're there with credentials, authorized observers. And so it's a pretty narrow list. And beyond that, anyone that's not authorized to be there, and that includes voters who have already finished the process of voting, they within the allowable time should cast their ballot and then continue on to make sure that the process remains orderly. And especially I think now with social distancing and the need to keep things moving along, kind of an expectation that the process will be allowed to flow smoothly. So we'll be providing, I think, more guidance to our city clerks and working closely with local law enforcement as well, just given the concern around the potential for people to be in and around polling places to understand who is authorized to be there, knowing that there is a 100-foot boundary around each polling place where within which only authorized persons are allowed to be, to make sure that things can flow, I think, as they have and as we expect that they should on election day.
How would you know if someone died or moved?
Yeah.
So the first point, we get regular updates from the Department of Health. So we get reports that will come through the statewide voter registration system, just as we do get updates for voters that register online or through driver and vehicle services. So we push those updates through, and if we see that the system will alert us to the fact that that voter has an absentee ballot out there, and if it's been accepted, then we take our next steps of pulling that ballot from secure storage.
So what precautions are going to be taken in case of voter intimidation on election day?
Yeah, certainly. I think that falls in line with what we were just discussing. If there are, if there's anyone in the polling place that is preventing someone's free access to the polling place and interfering with their ability to vote, that would be a violation. I know we've got local law enforcement, I think, ready to step in if requested by election judges and by the city clerk in the case of someone that's causing a disturbance at the polling place or in any way inhibiting their access to be able to vote.
If those people would be within outside of that 100-foot barrier, but still intimidating people, can that be addressed, or is that just a moot issue then?
It would fall outside of the scope of, I think, what's governed by election laws, but, you know, there are certainly other laws, I think, related to harassment and things that would be in place to help make sure that people can still come and go freely about any activity, I think, in the course of their day. And then certainly would have that extra protection when it comes to within that 100-foot barrier.
That was exactly my question I was just going to put in the chat, because I think we all know that that's probably likely to happen. Does every polling place need a guard out there to watch that 100 feet, to observe what's going on just outside of that 100 feet?
What I would say is, I know we're giving some additional clarity around that barrier in terms of our GIS department is actually pulling together maps of each polling place to help to define what that space is. And again, this is something that we're working closely with the county sheriff's office and with local law enforcement to be prepared and to work closely with city clerk's offices and with the county elections, as well as election judges at the polling place to understand exactly what that boundary means and to make sure that, you know, if things come up that require a sergeant at arms or a peace officer to help restore order, that they're, I think, ready to help and assist with that role. And I know with the story that came out on Friday, the Secretary of State's office is very in tune with this as well, and indicated over the weekend they'll be sharing additional guidance with the counties in the coming days. So I expect there'll be more forthcoming on that topic.
Okay, the next question is, post-election, do the county and Secretary of State evaluate what worked and what did not work? I found the signature envelope problematic. My signature was distorted because of the seam placement in the middle of the signature line.
Yeah, and I think that would reflect specifically on a county printing thing. Each county will have a different vendor that might be used to print envelopes. But certainly, I mean, across the board, I think a lot of things are looked at and will be looked at after this election, both within Anoka County, as well as working with our peer counties and with the Secretary's office to try and come up with sort of a review of what we all went through. And this will certainly be a year unlike any other, where we have a lot to consider and kind of understand what, will be different moving forward as a result of this. Certainly this is a unique set of circumstances, but voters will be changing voting behaviors, I think, as a result of this. And we need to be ready for and look at what sort of improvements might we recommend that we could make, even at a procedural level for the administrative side, as well as for voters, to make sure we're making this process work as well as it can.
Okay, do the parties have the ability to have someone at canvassing day to observe the process of your office? To observe the process your office does with the designated county commissioners?
Yes, so that the county canvas is open to the public, so it's anyone can attend the county canvas. I think certainly with the issues that come up as far as social distancing this year, that might have to figure out exactly what that looks like, but it is a public meeting, so yes, anyone can attend.
So because of COVID, the polling places have to be large enough to accommodate social distancing. What has the county done to work with the cities in ensuring this?
Yes, I know cities looked at all of their polling places and I think did a review to determine whether any polling places needed to be moved as a result of having too small of a space to effectively administer voting. And there were a handful of changes that were made ahead of the amended July 1st deadline. So I think that will be a big part of planning and making sure that the space flows as smoothly as possible to allow for that distancing and to make sure that is, the 6 feet recommended distance is kept throughout the voting process.
Okay. How about if someone shows up and refuses to wear a mask, what happens?
Yes, so it's the same procedures that were in place if any of you did vote in person at the primary. So election judges will have masks on hand to offer to voters and ask them to put on a mask if they haven't brought one with them. If they won't put on a mask, then they are asked to consider the curbside voting option, so they can vote from their vehicle. And again, if they refuse that option, then they must still be allowed to vote, and then any violation of the mask ordinance will be noted on a log, so that information would be then passed on to local law enforcement for possible review.
Okay. But all right. In over 40 years, I have never stood in line to vote for a long time, yet I hear of other places in the state that have real problems. Why is that? Shouldn't there be a reasonably constant ratio of polling places to the number of voters?
That's a good question, yeah. And I think generally within Anoka County, we've got a pretty good ratio in terms of the number of registered voters per polling place, and there are averages that are suggested by the Secretary's office as far as drawing maps for precincts and considering the size of a given precinct. I think it can come down to training issues too, if there are certain problems that might jam things up. And you talk about other areas of the state and certainly other states in the US that you saw stories of problems that they had at the primaries. And a big part of that was trying to cram too many registered voters into a single location at the same time rolling out new equipment. That always has a learning curve to it. So I think a big piece of that is having good training, having a team of judges. One of the benefits has been Anoka County has had a great group of election judges that have come back year after year. So that helps. It goes a long way towards knowing the location, knowing how the different roles are supposed to function throughout the day. So I think that makes a big difference as well. So, but yes, I mean, I think there's definitely variation due to number of voters, procedures, and other things that might vary from county to county.
Thanks. I was an election judge at a place with where with social distancing, there would be no more than 10 voters could be in the building. This is what I was concerned about. It was the city of Blaine. The city of Blaine is aware of the situation. So hopefully they will have addressed that.
Yes, and I think again, it's probably everyone is doing the most they can within the constraints of still wanting to keep all 128 precincts open within the county. I think that was a big target. I think within the state as well was to not have this consolidation of polling places where you've got potentially a bigger space, but trying to put more more precincts within a single building. And the truth is, I know in city of Blaine in particular, they looked at certain alternatives where they did move one of their polling places, and it's pretty hard to find the right space that meets all of the requirements for establishing a polling place beyond sort of your usual suspects of the schools, the churches, and some of the other buildings that have been used. So I know they did look to explore their full range of options and will be, I think, working within those constraints as best they can for November. But a big part of that has also been the rate at which people are voting ahead of Election Day. And I think that's going to make a big difference to have, we'll see what plays out over the next several weeks, but to have 80,000+ voters that have already requested ballots or have already voted will make a big difference in terms of reducing lines that would otherwise be there at the polling place on Election Day.
How many voters are there in Anoka County, out of curiosity?
We're definitely at a high watermark for number of registered voters, and I think it's north of 227,000 at last check. So it's been on an upward trajectory certainly since 2018 and going back, but it's been a fairly large jump.
Okay, so let's go on back to the PowerPoint, and then Paul, you can certainly add anything as we go. Okay. Thank you. Leslie, I appreciate you beyond words. Can we go down to number 8, the slide number 8? Next one. Okay, some of the concerns that have been expressed on the news again is that the Postal Service is not going to be at capacity to handle the mail-in ballots. And so I had some conversations with some people in the post office, and the next 2 slides are actually from the post office, and they are assuring us that they have enough capacity, including the collection boxes and processing equipment, to handle all election mail this year, which is predicted to amount to less than 2% of the total volume of mail from mid-September to election day. So to put it in context, she said that the Postal Service delivers 433 million pieces of mail a day. Even if all Americans were to vote by mail this year, 333 million ballots over the course of the election would only be 3/4 of what the post office delivers in a single day. Next slide, Leslie. So that, I think, is reassuring. The United Postal Service is responsible for assuring that the safety of all mail, including election mail. And if there are concerns, there's a site that people can visit. This little URL down here, the www.usps, is a video that I didn't include in to watch, but it's but people can get this website and look at the video. It talks about a task force that they're developing between the unions and the different postal services to ensure that the mail is addressed promptly in a timely manner to ensure that we have a secure and safe election with mail-in voting. I did talk to a union steward, and he told me that the post office does not want to be the news, and they will do everything in their power to ensure that that ballots are handled safely and securely and smoothly. And he gave me an example of a situation where on primary day in Egan, there were 3 ballots that needed to go to Bemidji, and they were not going to make it on a regular mail delivery because there wasn't time. Someone drove those ballots to Bemidji, and he said that is the degree of their degree of commitment to ensuring that all ballots are counted. So I really felt that the Postal Service people were very helpful in talking to us and trying to allay the concern that is just, the media, they sometimes have news and they sometimes have anxiety. It's hard to tell the difference sometimes. So can you go to the next slide, Leslie? So did my ballot arrive? So you can check to see whether your ballot arrived at this website right here, MinVotes SOS. And you enter your data and it will learn the status of the ballot. Now, I did that twice and I was thinking, oh my gosh, my ballot should arrive. So there is a site that tells you where to go if you want to go to your local. So then I went to Anoka County and I asked if my ballot had arrived. And truly, this was like late in the afternoon. And the next morning, mid-morning, I had a response from the county that my ballot had arrived and would be counted. So I just think that this has been, just my own personal experience this year is one of assurance that the system is working. And I've never done a vote by mail. So this is my first time. But I thought that it worked splendidly. And I think people are so committed to having this happen well. Do you want to go to the next slide, Leslie? Is there a next slide, or are we at the end? Okay, yeah, we have a couple ways. In person, early voting is another way you can vote. You can vote early at your designated polling place or at your county election office. And in Anoka County, that can happen, as Paul was talking about. And if you want to know where you can check, you can go to this website and it will give you all the information on the voting sites for early voting. In-person voting. But next slide. Speak up, Paul, if you have anything to add. Next slide, Leslie. Oh, okay. And then the final way to vote is in-person voting on election day. So the November 3rd, the polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And you can find your polling site by visiting MinVotes SOS. If you need to do that. I don't know why absentee ballot is there. That's a mistake. But you can find your polling place at a site. Just drop off the absentee ballot. and recognize that the polling site that you have typically used might not be there because of COVID. Like, I'm sure that no schools are being used because no one can go into schools. Is that correct, Paul?
No, there are still many schools that are being used
Really?
in.
Okay.
Yep.
Because
Yeah,
boy, I suppose they have a separate entrance and it's no hallway time, I would guess.
Yes. Yeah, the legislature did include a provision in the law that they passed this year, special for 2020, to encourage cities to look at alternative options outside of the schools. But for the same reasons we had mentioned before, it's a really limited set of buildings and locations that meet all of the requirements for polling places. So there are still many school polling places that are being used. Going back to a few slides, I would echo what you had mentioned about the USPS and their interest in making sure that this goes well, and their ability to support our office, all counties in Minnesota, and I'm sure across the country. They've been tremendous partners in this process. We've heard reports from voters who we've sent out ballots on Monday afternoon. They've reached the voter by the next morning, which is rare for us to get, I think any of us, to get next day delivery for anything that you're not paying a premium for. So they are definitely prioritizing this. Anytime we have questions or issues, things with undeliverable ballots or things that they can help with, they've been very quick to respond. And so voters should feel confident sending back their ballots by mail. The vast majority of our ballots in Anoka County have come back to us through the USPS. By the same token, if you'd prefer to drop it off, that's certainly an option as well, and you can drop it off at your city or the county based on the timelines that were laid out there. Trying to think on there was one other point I was going to make, but I'll maybe leave it back to questions and it'll.
So if the presidential vote is challenged, would this automatically apply to all down ballot races?
Well, I guess it's important to define exactly what you mean. If there is a recount, so if there is one contest that is going to be recounted, and that would be if it's within one of the publicly funded margins, or if a candidate has requested a discretionary recount, that would count just that race. So you don't recount all of the races on the ballot, just the one that is subject to the recount. Same thing with an election contest, which is separate. So that would be something that a candidate or a party or someone is challenging a certain aspect of the election or the results as due to some kind of misstep or something that might have altered the outcome of the election. That would fall under an election contest. And again, that would be specific to one race, but I think then if you find that there are other more widespread issues, then it could potentially impact down ballot races. But when you're speaking about the outcome of a specific contest in terms of like the Coleman Franken recount or Dayton Emmer in 2010, the only races that were recounted in that case were the ones in question.
So then the other question is when a polling place is changed, besides the usual postcard, what else is done to inform the voters involved?
Yeah, so there is a requirement if a polling place is changed that all voters receive that all registered voters, their households receive a notice of polling place change postcard. Cities will often, they'll put any polling place change in their newsletters, on their website, on their official bulletin boards, in other locations to make sure that voters are notified of that change. There are additional requirements if a change is made close enough to election day that are required in terms of posting and reaching out to the media to make sure that anyone knows of a last minute change, or especially if something were to happen on election day, say there was a fire at a polling place and it had to be moved to an emergency location, additional notification and using the news to get the word out, and posting information, having people at the previous site to redirect voters would all be part of that emergency polling place change.
And I mean, if worse comes to worse, there's probably a sign outside the old polling place.
Yes, yeah, that would be part of the requirement.
Yeah.
And I remembered what I was going to reference. I think this might be something some of you have had questions on. It certainly was in the news a few weeks back. Was what happens if I request an absentee ballot, but I decide I don't want to vote it and I want to go and vote in person on election day at my regular polling place? And any voter is free to do that. No additional action is needed on your part. We would encourage you not to bring your absentee ballot with you if you know you're trying to go and vote at your polling place instead. Just reduce any potential for confusion with election judges. Leave it at home, go and vote at the polling place. All of the rosters, and in Anoka County, we have electronic poll books. Those will be updated to reflect an AB designation on any voter that has sent back and had their absentee ballot accepted. So that is an indication on the roster that that person has voted and they are not allowed to vote on election day. So that AB designation is a definitive marker to the election judge to tell them this person has already cast their ballot. They cannot vote at the polling place. Speaking from experience at the primary, we had at least a half a dozen voters who sent their ballots back in for the primary by mail, and then went and showed up at the polling place and genuinely had no idea that they had voted. They forgot that they had already sent back their ballot and were stunned to see that AB designation marked on the roster. And thankfully, those election judges told the voter, this means that you've already sent back your ballot, and they referred them to the county, and a couple of them did come to the county, and we showed them the signature envelope and the application that had their signatures on it. And so they understood their ballot had been counted. So those are some of the checks that are in place, and we update those rosters throughout the day for any additional ballots that arrive on election day to get those names marked in the roster so that they're updated to ensure that a voter is not also voting at the polling place. And then now that we're going to be counting ballots after election day, there's sort of a reverse process to that, where on Wednesday after election day, we'll have to cross-reference and run a report through the polling place rosters to make sure any ballots that we get back on Wednesday, that voter did not vote the previous day at their polling place.
I'd like to think that I would never forget that I voted, but I have forgotten a number of things. So I can't
Maybe a primary is a little easier. But no, I would certainly say that was one of the better investments that the county has made in terms of elections infrastructure, and that's incredibly important in this year. So counties that are still using paper rosters face a significant challenge to make sure that their rosters remain updated as those additional absentee ballots come back in.
Okay, we have another question. Some of us have a vote from home sign in our yard or in our apartment lobby, in my case. What would be a helpful time to take these down?
That's a good question, because we will continue to process absentee applications. There is no legal cutoff to when we stop sending those out. I think the additional 7 days maybe gives a little bit more time for a voter to realistically get their ballot and send it back in time. I would still say at least a week out, we would probably start telling voters to go in person. Fortunately, we've had the resources to be able to keep up with a near next day turnaround from when we get an application. So today we went through several hundred paper and online applications with ballots that will then be mailed out tomorrow with the team that prepares those. I know not every county is I think some are at that pace. Others are, I think, have a little more time to have to work through and process those. And we will certainly be more strapped as we get closer to election day with the other responsibilities that pick up. So long answer, but I would say at least a week prior to election day, if that could be pulled out, that would be helpful, maybe 10 days or so to at that point at least encourage the broader consideration of all your options.
So what about a mistake in the AB marker?
If there was genuinely a mistake, if a voter is marked as AB and they did not vote absentee, we would speak with the election judges and the voter as well, and pull materials to take a look at what we have on hand and make sure. I think the most clear example of that is if for some reason a voter record was linked, like a junior senior with the same name, and it had mistakenly been marked that way. We can then look at that and verify with the judge and with the voter that they're that record shouldn't be marked AB, and there is an override that the head judge has to allow a voter to check in, but it's really rare that we run into that. So the main takeaway is if they're marked AB, consider that person to have voted, unless you get definitive authorization to say yes, and a mistake was made, and that person should be allowed to vote.
I just want to say that I'm very glad that I do not have your job.
Well,
but I am very confident in what you're doing. I I found in preparation for this, I learned a lot that I didn't know. And I learned even more this evening. So I really appreciate what you're doing. And
Well, I thank you, and I appreciate all of your efforts, certainly, because a number of the calls that we get are from voters looking for more information about their candidates, and I think your forums are a fantastic outlet for us to be able to refer voters to get more information that they might not otherwise be able to get, and certainly your organization has supported our office in many ways, including the absentee ballots packets, including I voted stickers. That's one of the comments. I'm sure you've seen a few references to it on social media too. People are very excited that they still get that part of the experience along with their, that they normally would get at the polling place on election day. So that was a big help for us to be able for you to help us with that.
we have one more question, Paul. It's a follow-up question about challenge voting. If it's a legal challenge to the extra days of counting for example, by a presidential campaign, then that would also affect counting in other races too, or not? Yes or no?
Yes. I mean, so for example, that specific court ruling, which was appealed, and then again, another lawsuit was filed challenging the 7-day extension of us continuing to count absentee ballots after Election Day if they're postmarked on or before Election Day. If that law were to be overturned, as it was in Wisconsin, where they looked at adding an extension, but then it was overturned, then no ballots would be counted after that Election Day deadline. So previously in Minnesota, our deadline to get an absentee ballot back in our office was Election Day, and only ballots that were received on or before Election Day would be counted. Now, with this consent decree that's in place, they will continue to be counted for 7 days, barring any change. And I think the district court that ruled, I think it was earlier today or yesterday, I think, put in place that the law that was agreed to in that consent decree will stand. So we will continue to count for 7 days. But yes, in that hypothetical, if it were to be overturned, then all contests would not be counted after Election Day.
Paul, thank you so much. I really appreciate your help tonight and your expertise. And typically you'd be getting a mug, but you don't get it because we're not in person. So, but thank you, and a mug in our hearts. So there you go. Thank you.
I think a couple years ago I got one, so I have it regularly with my breakfast. So
there you go.
Thank you for that, and thank you for having me, and for all the work that you all are doing.
Now we're going to turn it back over to Gretchen because Pat Kennedy has arrived. So
yeah, I want to recognize Pat Kennedy for all the work she's done. So Pat, we have the Zilla Way Award, which we've been giving out for the past 24 years. And guess what? You are going to get the Zilla Way Award. And so this is the text. We acknowledge that you're a great and gracious community leader, and we appreciate your work as membership chair, as website maven, as person that keeps us on our toes, getting everything done. We didn't even put in here the book club and the film club. So thank you very much for everything. This is what the award looks like, Pat. And I will get it, and I will sign it, and I will see that it comes to you. Pat, do you want to click in and say anything, or?
Yes, thank you. I wasn't expecting that.
Obviously, or else you would have been here earlier.
I would have been on time.
Well, thank you, Pat, and thank you for everything, and thank everybody for everything. And we'll, sayonara, we'll see you again.
Gretchen, before you go, is this Mary Jo's Trushan's creativity?
It
once
is.
Again?
Isn't it beautiful?
Yes. Mary Jo, you do fabulous work every year for us. Thank you so much, and congratulations to Patricia.
You're so welcome. I have a lot of fun doing it. We should add just one thing about the Zilla Way Award. You might treasure it more, Pat. The awards were first all written, the wording by Zilla Way, because she is a published poetess, and so in recent years she has just sometimes has us run it by her, but in the very beginning, she wrote all the words herself, and that was very special.
I didn't know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Zilla. Thank you.
Yep. So long, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for this event.
TV.